Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how I can create this animation by using modifiers. So let's get started. First let's delete everything and add a torus. Press Ctrl 3 and go to the modifiers, set the render to 2, and you can collapse this now because we don't need it anymore. Now let's add a build modifier and set the length to 251. Now let's add a decimate modifier and set it to unsubdivide. Set the iterations to 1. Now if we go through the timeline, the torus is going to be built. And now let's add a wireframe modifier and now a simple deform modifier. By the way, for the wireframe modifier, check boundary and set the angle of the simple deform to 180. Now duplicate the simple deform modifier and set it to stretch. Set it to 0.5. Now let's add a remesh modifier and set it to 0.03. And as you can see, now we've got the main shape. By the way, I just realized that it doesn't matter if you set it to 250, so I'm going to set it back to 250. The only problem is that now if we go to 251, this is going to happen. I don't know why, probably because the build modifier is disabled or something, I'm not quite sure. So now let's go back to 250 and set up the rest of the scene. I'm going to add a plane, scale it by 10, so S10, and G set, and make sure that the object still touches the plane. Now let's go into edit mode and select these two vertices, E, set, and 10. Now go back to object mode, Ctrl A, apply scale, go back to edit mode and select them again, and Ctrl B to bevel. Bevel it a couple of times, like this. Go back to object mode and shade smooth. Now let's select the object here, the torus, and hit delete on the numpad. Press Ctrl 1 to go into a front view. Now let's rotate the view by pressing 8 on the numpad and Shift A, add a camera. Ctrl Alt 0 to go into camera view, and now let's add an empty plane axis, and now up here select face, and now if we hit G and Control, as you can see, the empty is going to snap to the faces of the object that we created here. Now let's add a light. I'm going to use a spotlight because I really like those. And Ctrl 1 again and rotate it like this, for example. Go to top view by pressing 7 on the numpad, and I'm going to place it around here. I want this area to be in the light and this to be more dark. But you can of course create it however you like. So let's go to the object data properties and set it to 1000. Go to a rendered view, and this is what it looks like so far. So let's set the spot size to 13 in my case, but you can of course create it however you like. So let's go to the object data properties and set it to 1000, 10,000. Control rendered view, and this is what it looks like so far. So let's set the spot size to 13 in my case. I'm going to make it blue, and maybe the spot size is a little too small, like this for example. Now let's select the torus again and go to shading, 0 to go into camera view again, and let's press new. Add a color ramp, connect it to the base color, and move the white closer to the black, like this. Now I'm going to make the white blue, copy the hex code, and paste it to the black. And now just make it a little darker. Let's go to rendered view to see how it looks. By the way, you can also use Eevee, but I'm going to use cycles for this. Now let's add a wave texture. Connect the color to the vector. And now Control T. By the way, if Control T doesn't work for you, you need to go to Edit, Preferences, and type in Node Wrangler. And you need to enable this. Now let's use object instead of generated and add a color ramp. Move the white in again, like this, and now connect it to the normal. Again, connect the color to the vector, and now let's add a bump node. Connect the color to the height, and now we have this texture here. I'm going to set the distortion to 7.7 and the detail to 15. I think I'm also going to make it metallic and turn down the roughness a bit to 0.25. By the way, I recommend that you save if you haven't done it already, and now go up here and under color management. This is a trick that I learned from Ducky3D. I'm going to leave a link to his channel in the description. Now let's set this to high contrast and to -1.5. And as you can see, it immediately looks better in my opinion. Now let's go back to layout mode and select the camera. Check depth of field, and under focus object select the empty. If we go here we can see it better. Set the f-stop to 0.7 and the blades to 16. And as you can see, this area is now blurred out, and if we move the empty, it's going to change, as you can see. But I'm going to leave it here. By the way, if you are adding another object and having trouble moving it while pressing Control, don't forget that you have this turned on. I'm going to set it to increment again. One last thing that I'm gonna do is to go to shading again and select the plane and create a new material, make it metallic, and set the roughness to 0.1 for example. I think that's a little too strong. 0.25. I think that looks good. Now let's go back to layout mode, Shift A, add a cube, and scale it so that it covers the entire scene. Now let's go back to shading, press new and delete the principled BSDF, Shift A, search, type in volume, and add a principled volume. Connect the volume to the volume and set density to 0.2, for example. Now it's going to look like this, which I think looks pretty nice. Maybe let's increase the strength of the spotlight, set it to 25,000 for example. That's too strong. Now it's 25,000, I accidentally set it to 250,000. I think this looks good. I'm also going to change the radius of the spotlight to 0.6. I think this looks better. Now for the render settings, like I said, I use cycles. The maximum steps are at 128 and I checked denoise. For the compositing, I enabled denoising data and added a denoise node. I have a preset. Now for the render settings, I set the samples to 128 and enabled denoise. I'm going to set it to optics, and you can simply leave the passes. And now let's go here and enable denoising data. Now let's go to compositing, and as you can see we have these additional options. By the way, you need to check use nodes. We get these options because we enabled this. Now let's add a denoise node and connect the noisy image to image, denoising normal to normal and denoising albedo to denoising albedo. Now let's go to the output settings. I'm going to leave it at 1920 by 1080 and 30 FPS. Now let's set it to JPEG and set the quality to 100. I have already created a folder for the animation, and now let's name it. I'm going to call it Torus Animation. By the way, if you add an underscore after the name, it's going to automatically assign numbers to the frames. Now let's go to render and hit render animation, or simply press Ctrl F12 to start rendering. I'm going to wait until it has finished rendering, and then I'm going to show you how you can combine all the images to one video. Once it has finished rendering, let's go to the plus sign up here, go to video editing and video editing. Hover over this location and press Ctrl C to copy the path. Go back to frame 1, Shift A, image sequence, paste the path in here and remove the name. Now press A, and just in case your images aren't sorted by number, go here, sort, and add a modified date or name. Now let's click Add Image Strip, and as you can see now we have the images in the timeline, and we can see it up here. Now let's go to File Format, FFmpeg Video, Encoding, set the container to MPEG-4, and the video output quality to high quality. You can change the name of the final animation. I'm going to leave it at Torus Animation. That's okay. And now if we hit render animation again, it is going to compile the videos, the images into one video. So let's quickly wait for that. And now it has finished rendering the video. So that's it with the tutorial. I hope you liked it. If you did, press like. If you didn't, press dislike. And remember to check out the link in the description. I'll see you next time.